New this morning, the International Space Station has maneuvered 3 times this year to avoid space debris. Most recent incident just last week, prompting a NASA administrator to exclaim in a tweet, "Debris is getting worse." So how dangerous is it to orbit the Earth, and what's being done to make it safer? I met with the senior vice president of a San Diego headquartered defense contractor at the forefront of satellite communications to find out.
We envision space as a vastly open frontier. But in reality, it has become an increasingly more congested and contested environment.
This promotional video produced by Kratos, a defense contractor headquartered in San Diego. The company also has operations around the world, including this center in Colorado Springs, where ABC 10 News reached the senior vice president, Frank Backus.
From a space standpoint, there is, a tremendous amount of space available to work within. However, what we're seeing is many more satellites and many more objects.
Backus says there are a few thousand active satellites presently orbiting the Earth, but there's a lot more stuff up there that needs to be watched.
We're tracking over 250,000 objects in space.
Most of it pieces of debris no bigger than a softball, made up of rocket parts and old satellites discarded into orbit over decades. Each piece zipping along at some 17,000 miles per hour, with the destructive force of a bomb should it hit anything. And there have been a few very rare incidents over the years. But as Backus said, there's a tremendous amount of space, and that debris, fortunately, plays by the rules of physics.
So we can predict where that piece of debris is going to be hours and even days in advance.
Thus, the International Space Station has had plenty of time to ensure its own safety with recent maneuvers. But Backus says a greater risk is the rapidly increasing number of active and maneuverable satellites.
And if they have the ability to maneuver, then they have the ability to be a threat to other space systems.
A threat that could come by accident or with intent.
It is important to understand that as humanity becomes more and more dependent on space, space then becomes a domain to impose power between different countries.
Satellite's a long-established part of our world infrastructure. We tap into it when we watch television or activate our phone's GPS. But you take out a few of the right or wrong satellites, depending on your point of view, and we could lose a lot more than just our sense of direction.
If you lose enough GPS satellites, you could impact the timing signals. That could impact our banking transactions. There's a tremendous amount of impact that can occur if we lose some of these capabilities.
To prevent such an outcome, Kratos has developed a tracking method using radio frequencies to determine the exact position and intent of active satellites. Backus says it performs beyond the capabilities of radar or line of sight. The system has been in use for 8 years and is now, in partnership with Microsoft, being adapted to the digital domain for improved command and control. This as the number of satellites is expected to grow exponentially in coming years as smaller and cheaper CubeSats entice more governments and private ventures into space.
Where they're talking about putting up hundreds to thousands of satellites, it becomes very important to understand where those satellites are and what they're doing. In September, the Trump administration issued the Space Policy Directive 5, establishing a cybersecurity framework for space systems to protect against unauthorized access. Well, meanwhile, research is underway in Japan to develop the first satellite designed to destroy space debris by using lasers to push it into the atmosphere where it will burn up. Satellite could launch as soon as 2026.